So the Youth WINS program is one program of, I think, 60 programs that stand up here. There's a families program, there's elderly program that for people that are homeless, there's grandparents as parents, grandparents that are raising their grandchildren, you know, just all kinds of supportive services. The way it's always been explained to me is when there's a need in the community, like people reach out to CAC to create funding to prop up, you know, an agency, well, or I don't know what you call it, like a program that would sustain the need. So Youth WINS started, I think it was 2016. That was before I came in. CAC received a call from Halls High School. They found 2 kids were sleeping in a makeshift tent in the woods behind the school. And the reason that the school found out about it is because they came in soaking wet and they started asking questions. So in trying to find resources, they called CAC. And the person that took the call, her name is Annette Beebe. And so she started to look for resources and she realized there was nothing for youth. So from that call of those 2 youth, this program was built. And from that program, they were able to create the Fostering Youth Initiatives, which is a voucher specific for youth that are aging out of foster care, which I believe one of those youth that was found camping outside was a youth that aged out of foster care. There's not any youth-specific housing at this point, but there has definitely been an increase in awareness of youth homelessness, youth exiting foster care, and just as we keep moving through this, youth that are LGBTQ that become homeless, just all these subpopulations of youth homelessness, and we keep trying to find ways to navigate, address, and, you know, hopefully at some point they'll do specific housing for youth. So for me, I always wanted to work at CAC because I saw the job postings, but it was really hard to actually get in the door. And I was working for another a mental health organization not far from here, and I had a youth that came in and she was homeless and she had some mental health things that she was working through. And she said, "Can you drive me to CAC to get my mail because I need to see if I have any housing information?" And I said, "Of course." So I drove her here and one of the case managers brought out her mail because it was during COVID. So like we met outside and he's like, "You don't usually see case managers that will, you know, help somebody and go the extra mile." I was just all like, well, she needs it. This is for her to get housing and get off the streets and address her mental health, and, you know, I want to be that person and do it for her. And they were like, "Well, why don't you come work here?" So that's how I got in the door. And Jasper, do you want to talk about your experience with working here?
Sure. I was homeless. The person that I eventually ended up marrying introduced me to the Youth Action Board. We came there. I was just in it for the food and the gift cards that come with the group. But after a bit, when we started getting more stable and we got into a hotel out of our shelter and things calmed down, we were able to start getting more organized in the community. I started seeing needs that I could fill, and eventually Christine was like, "I really want you to apply to this job." So I did, not really understanding what kind of role I was going to be getting into, or whether or not I'd even get hired, because I don't have any kind of college degree or anything. And sure enough, I did. Mostly I just go wherever there are youth voices at the moment. The Youth Action Board needs me here right now, so I will be here right now. But if that focus shifts, or if they themselves decide upon somebody who they feel is more capable of carrying their message, or that they think is more capable of bringing them forward into housing and success, I want to be the person to step down and let that, you know, take over.
We were homeless after like 2020 and the whole COVID thing. We were able to hold on for a little bit by couch surfing with family members, and then eventually me and my siblings would end up completely homeless. And so my sister found CAC, and CAC gave us to Christine. And Christine told us about YAB and the gift cards and everything like that, and I started to attend meetings. And I realized that it was like one of the only places someone my age could actually talk about being homeless and not be told to get a job or just some kind of like off-the-hand solution. but that we could give them solutions. And so then eventually Christine, because I was actually starting to slightly take over the meetings a little bit with like my ideas, just told me to take the co-chair position, and so I did.
So for Youth WINS, our main jam is housing. We're trying to help youth get into housing. But Jasper had a really long talk earlier today about housing isn't the end solution for ending youth homelessness, because we are still seeing re-entry into youth homelessness is much higher than first-time entry. But all that to say, so we are trying to help youth get into housing. Our goal is to stay with them for 3 to 6 months once they're housed, to kind of build that stability, which is so necessary. And then we also have resource connections for education. We work with TCAT, SEED, Knoxworks. We also have a connection with Pellissippi, and that's just trying to get youth, to where they need to go. So TCAT was a really great community partner for us. They came in and talked to YAB about, doing the high set. And a lot of youth that are coming into homelessness are struggling with poverty as well. And so, the gateway out of poverty seems to be education, employment, advancement, those things like that. So the YAB had told us we're struggling with understanding, why we should get a high set, what is involved with that. So we invited TCAT to come in and talk to them about it. And that really just broadened the conversation, so they knew what to expect, who they were going to talk to, where they're located, things like that. So that's what we tried to do. And that's just one example. We also do connection to workforce development. A lot of these youth, they're young. They're starting their first job. They don't know how to make a resume, or the importance of giving a 2 weeks notice. So we try to fill in those gaps for them as well. And of course, connecting to mental health with Cherokee, Helen Ross McNabb, because they are our biggest providers in the community. And another big thing that we do is helping youth get their birth certificates, their IDs, their social security cards, because those are vital records for a reason. And a lot of times there are so many barriers to getting them, whether that's transportation or money. So we try to eliminate those barriers. So we'll drive you to go get your social security card. We have funding to help pay for that birth certificate, to get your ID, and someone to kind of walk you through those things. So I would say the big thing is just eliminating barriers. Our case managers, when it comes to housing, they will talk to the landlord. We helped get Skylar and his sister and her boyfriend, the sister's boyfriend, into housing. And one of the things that we did was just talking to the landlord. I'm going to be there, I'm going to support them. I'm going to follow up with them. If they have questions, or if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Because a huge barrier for youth for getting into housing is, youth are seen as unreliable. They're probably not going to pay the rent. Probably just going to have a credit score. They don't have a credit score, right? They're probably going to tear the walls out, and have these awesome rock parties every night, and we just can't have that. And it's not true. So a big part of our program is just destigmatizing a lot of these things and just walking through people, no, they don't have a credit score, but they're working on it. These are the things that we're talking with them about, or how are they going to get a credit score if somebody doesn't start? Why can't you be the person to start, and let's work together to support them.
Action Board, our general meeting layout is, it starts with a free class. These classes have been voted on or requested by YAB members. It can be anything from Narcan and harm reduction to mental health services to even learning about trauma-informed care and how that looks in the workplace and how to advocate for that in their spaces. Banking, renter's readiness, that sort of thing. Anything that they think could be helpful on their journey to permanent housing. And then it follows by the community meeting after dinner. And generally speaking, we open this part of the meeting up for our community partners and adults who are interested in issues of youth homelessness, so they can come in, and they don't get to lead the meeting, they don't get to talk in the meeting unless they've requested to beforehand. They're here to sit and listen to the youth. And the youth can ask, what does your agency do? Why doesn't your agency do this? If I wanted to get this started, who do I go to? We've had The mayor of Knoxville down here, she spoke with the youth, she heard their testimonies and their stories, and she, on our behest, made November Youth Homelessness Awareness Month in Knoxville, and just stuff like that. So it's an opportunity for young people to be heard, because you don't get that kind of experience under your belt without feeling some anger and irritation about the fact that very few people are giving you a space to use it, and we're hoping to change that.
Because when I was a homeless youth, I used to watch, the community television to kind of see what was going on, things I could maybe go to. So I was thinking that might be a good way to let other homeless youth know, because that's a huge barrier that we continue to have, is, letting homeless youth know that, one, there's an organization that is here to help, and two, that there's a safe space that they can come into to socialize. They won't be stigmatized, they can get some food, and I think Jasper and Skylar both mentioned the incentivizing of the program, but at the same time, it means so much to these youth. A lot of times they come in, they've not ate, they're hungry. It's been 2 or 3 days since they ate. So it's wonderful that they can have a meal and then leave here with this stipend, to go buy food. I know when Jasper was still experiencing homelessness, like, they were buying formula for their baby, it's kind of helping bridge that gap. And not only that, like, they're getting these incentives, but they're also leaving with socialization, right? They're in a safe space. They learned something. Like Jasper mentioned, we did a budgeting and a banking class. A lot of these youth, again, they didn't have that information before, So, and we're really just, the information too, Skylar had mentioned that, he was throwing out all this information, and it was fantastic information, and we take that information, how can we improve programs? We use that information for grants, because the big thing, on the national level right now is people with lived experience. Them telling us what they need, where they're struggling, because not everybody can relate, and if you can't relate, you can't fix the problem. So all the information that we take from that, we are using that to apply for grants to do more of what we're already doing.
Well, from my experience, not only am I no longer technically homeless anymore, we finally have our first apartment for the first time in my life, and it's entirely thanks to Christine and her awesomeness. It's also really just nice to know that you have kids your age all in a room together, and that just by talking to each other, we now have the resources in order to change something that is, like, actively hurting us. Like, to be able to go into a room and talk to people about the fact that, Summer had mentioned it before about CAT buses and everything not changing their laws, and the fact they're going to switch from paper, cards into, non-paperless. This is going to hurt us. So we have people who can bring problems that are coming to us, and we can, stomp them out before they happen. So we can, reduce harm to our community. And we can also, fix problems as they come, and we can give each other support, and, it's really nice to be able to see a community and be able to meet them without fear that it is when you're homeless. You fear meeting with your community.
I think the socialization is a very important aspect of it. It's not safe out there. You can't figure out who's safe out there. You age differently out there. I mean, there are people that you would not believe are under the age of 25. I have gray hairs myself, just because of the stress and the trauma of homelessness. So to be able to know that, in your small town there's 12, 13 other kids that know what it's like, it's a big deal.
Through data, we learned that 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ. So they are the highest subpopulation of youth homelessness. And, as we come into YAB, that's kind of what we're seeing the most of, is LGBTQ youth looking for a safe place to go to hang out. And that's not to discount, POC youth or heterosexual youth, because they are out there, they do exist, and they do come into our YAB meetings. But for what this does for the community is, without people like Jasper and Skylar, you know, being visibly, you know, of the LGBTQ community and going out and saying like, hey, this is my experience, like, hey, this is what I need, this is what the community can do better. You know, they're really like amplifying a voice, not just for themselves, not just for homeless youth, but just for, you know, the entire LGBTQ community, and for everybody, you know, really. And I mean, a lot of times we get into these conversations about, you know, we want to do so much more, you know, for adult homelessness, for the elderly homelessness, you know, but we're kind of put into this pocket of like, we have to focus on what we're doing right now. So Knox Pride is a really great partner for us, and they, you know, they hear these conversations, and they started their own thing where they were actually reaching out to elderly LGBTQ, because they may be even more scared to come out, because, you know, it wasn't as acceptable when they were younger, so they may not understand that these resources are out there. So again, like the youth being able to elevate this voice, I mean, like it goes out in a big way, and it's so important.